Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com. And you know what? Star Wars has tons of fantastic sci-fi elements that cause millions of people to instantly fall in love with the movies. The lightsabers, the Force, the droids. But because the saga revolves around a war on a galactic scale, the plot wouldn't have had the same impact without the spaceships that are just blasting at one another. And of all of them, is there anything more iconic than the X-Wing? I'll answer that. No. But here's the thing, as iconic as it is, there are still so many questions about it that we need answers for, but luckily, that's why I'm here today to help you out, my friend. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 secrets behind X-Wings you need to know. Number 10. The Empire were meant to use X-Wings. The X-Wing starfighter has always been synonymous with the Rebel Alliance. After seeing the spacecraft whizzing around Star Destroyers and blasting at the Death Star, it's hard to see the vessel as anything except a force of good. Ironically, though, the X-Wing was originally designed for the Empire. Incom Corporation manufactured these starfighters during the Clone Wars for the Imperial Navy. The Empire approved of the vehicles since they appeared to have no exploitable weaknesses, but as the deal was about to close, the Galactic Empire changed its mind, believing the TIE fighter provided a better fit for its troops. Since the TIE line lacked structural reinforcement or shielding, you may wonder why the Emperor personally gave these vehicles the green light. Well, it turns out the answer was because of money. Because the TIE line was substantially cheaper to manufacture, Darth Sidious and Moff Tarkin agreed to dissolve the X-Wing deal. With millions of unused X-Wings collecting dust, the Alliance were able to purchase them at a reasonable price. Number 9. It is the perfect spaceship. Even though the X-Wing looks like a pretty standard vessel in the Star Wars universe, it cannot be emphasized enough how effective this starfighter is. After all, it only took 30 ships to take down the Death Star, despite the fact that it was the size of a small moon. Although the X-Wing has no specific factor that makes it stand out, it's balanced in every way, making it the perfect fighter jet. Unlike TIE fighters, it has highly advanced shielding. Also, there's the small fact that the TIE fighter's enormous wings makes it impossible for the pilot to see to his left or right, which is a pretty big design flaw. Even if the X-Wing is damaged, each automobile is supplied with an R2 unit that can manage repairs. On top of that, each ship is capable of hyperspace travel, which the TIE fighters lack. X-Wings also have long-range sensors, allowing them to detect targets from a vast distance. However, the average X-Wing is so small, the Empire has difficulty detecting them unless they are very, very close. When you see all of these advantages that the X-Wing has, it is baffling why the Empire disregarded them for the inferior TIE fighter. Number 8. Real dogfight footage was used for inspiration. Star Wars may have become one of the most influential films, and say it with me kids, of all time! But that doesn't change the fact that the production was beyond chaotic. The script for Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope just kept on changing. Sandstorms delayed production, actors were falling ill, and many of the props just malfunctioned. And when George Lucas got to film scenes, he was very unimpressed by what he saw. When he looked at what little footage he had of the X-Wings flying through space, he found their movements unconvincing and janky. Because problems like this caused production to fall way behind schedule, the director realized he had to take drastic measures to get back on track. In the end, the editors decided to watch World War II footage of planes dogfighting and then emulate the vehicle's motions for the X-Wings. This may have been a desperate move, but it totally paid off since the X-Wings' movements looked more sharp and dynamic. Considering the original Star Wars concludes with a massive dogfight, copying footage from real dogfights saved the climax from looking amateurish and tacky. Number 7. How much do X-Wings cost? Since the most basic battleships in Star Wars are capable of light speed, such vessels would be regarded as priceless in our world. But since vehicles with shielding, weaponry, and interstellar travel are pretty standard in George Lucas's universe, it's hard for viewers to gauge how much something like an X-Wing would actually cost. Even though you wouldn't expect these starfighters to be too expensive since the average Yavin pilot can afford one, you should still be surprised by how utterly cheap they are. If we're talking about a brand new standard T-65B starfighter, that'll set you back around 150,000 Imperial credits. Considering one Imperial credit is the equivalent of $1, that is a bargain. I mean, $150,000 might sound like a fortune, but there are some cars on Earth that are worth more, and they don't have cloaking devices, nor can they blow up a Death Star. But if 150,000 credits is a bit steep for you, you can get a second-hand X-Wing at a much more reasonable 65,000 credits. The more recent T-85 model will cost you around 220,000 at the most, which sounds like a steal considering that it will allow you to fly anywhere in the entire galaxy. Number 6. The X-Wings made the actors sick. If you thought it would be a dream come true for the actors to zip around in an X-Wing, there's at least one Star Wars cast member who strongly disagrees. While filming The Force Awakens, Oscar Isaac, who plays Poe Dameron, had to stop filming because he suffered motion sickness while shooting his X-Wing scene. The reason why he found this so difficult is because the cockpit set that he was in was attached to a gimbal, a pivot that swings and rolls, causing the props and the actor within to flip around at incredible speed on an axis. While on Good Morning America to promote the movie, the Hollywood star exclaimed, "The first time I was on it, I was yelling and doing my thing and I got sick because I was so hot and it was moving around. I had to stop. I was like, hold on guys, I need to swallow my lunch for a second." Suffering motion sickness on a gimbal is common with actors, and sadly, Isaac learned this the hard way. Number 5. More thought was put into the X-Wing than you would ever imagine. The original X-Wing model has little resemblance to the finished product save for the wings and the nose-shaped front. George Lucas felt like this design just didn't work because it looked too slick. He wanted Star Wars to be a used universe, so everything appeared worn down by time and usage. As a result, clothes, equipment, and vehicles are intentionally made grimy, chipped, and dirty. To avoid the X-Wing from coming across as a generic spaceship, a dragster car was used for the vehicle's body. The Starfighter's design was based on an early 1960s Formula One car to accentuate its authenticity even further. To highlight the realism even beyond this, Lucas wanted the ships to look like they were riveted and assembled together, with visibly bulky engines and motors poking out of them. Even though the segments that were painted or glued on were tiny, with some being less than a millimeter, details like this helped make the vehicles look far more realistic. Number 4. There are many versions of the X-Wing. When you hear the word X-Wing, you tend to think of the white X-shaped jets with crimson streaks on the side. However, this model, the T-65 Space Superiority Fighter, is one of multiple types of X-Wings. Across all Star Wars mediums, there are 9 versions of this iconic spacecraft. However, only 4 of them appear in the movies and are the only ones that are considered canonical. An early prototype called the T-65CA2 is used by the titular heroes in Rogue One. In The Force Awakens, many rebels fly orange and grey X-Wings called T-70 fighters. These ships are much faster than their predecessors and have more diversity in weaponry since they can shoot 4 laser cannons in a single, double, or quadruple mode. This model was based on the original sketches for the vessel and at one point was meant to have 2 pilots flying in it. The T-85 was a blue and black X-Wing first mentioned in the novel Before the Awakening, which takes place just before The Force Awakens. This craft was meant to serve as Poe Dameron's personal vessel, but was swapped out for a T-70 at the last minute. And speaking of blue X-Wings, number 3, the X-Wing was supposed to be blue. The X-Wing's design has been tweaked to death over the years, and the average Star Wars fan knows that there are several variations of the ship, as we've just mentioned. However, pretty much everyone is familiar with the standard Starfighter's design. The vessel is normally covered in white plating and has red streaks on the noses and the sides of the wings. However, George Lucas originally envisioned the pilots in Yavin venturing to the Death Star riding blue X-Wings, not red. In fact, it was the Y-Wings that were meant to bear this hue. This was changed at the last minute when Lucas realized the X-Wing's colors weren't coming out right since the crew were filming their scenes in front of a blue screen. As a result, he changed the blue X-Wings to red and the red Y-Wings to gold. Bizarrely, blue X-Wings only became part of the Star Wars canon when they were mentioned in the 2015 novel Before the Awakening, which is set 38 years before the original movie. These marine vessels debuted on screen for the first time in the 2015 animated series Star Wars Resistance, which you probably forgot existed until I've just mentioned it right now. Number 2. Only one full-sized X-Wing was built for the original film. While filming the X-Wing dogfights, it's no surprise that George Lucas used miniatures of various scales. Depending on the shot, some of the miniatures were a few inches big while others were several feet. So, I ask you this, how many full-sized X-Wings were built for the original movie? Well, the answer is 1. Even though the final battle involves nearly 24 starfighters inside the Death Star trenches, none of them are fully sized. According to the special effects designer John Steers, the only full-size starfighter in the movie is the one we see in Yavin 4's base hangar. Now, you might be wondering about all the shots where we see the interior of the pilot's X-Wings while they're in the trenches. Surely they had to build multiple vehicles for that, right? Well, no, not at all. To cut down on the budget, the production crew built a single full-sized cockpit, which all of the X-Wing pilots used for their scenes. The backgrounds behind each actor were changed for these shots to hide the fact that the pilots were using the same cockpit. Using seamless editing, no one would suspect that only one X-Wing in the climax isn't a miniature. And number 1, the X-Wing designers worked for NASA. One of the reasons Star Wars stood out amongst the other sci-fi films of its day was how every single vehicle, weapon, and creature had a distinctive design. Even if you'd never seen Star Wars, you could instantly recognize the X-Wing, the TIE Fighter, or the Millennium Falcon due to their unique look. But the person who helped design most of these vehicles wasn't actually George Lucas, it was Colin Cantwell. Cantwell had a vast knowledge of how space vehicles were designed since he worked for NASA during the 1960s. In fact, he was the person who helped Walter Cronkite narrate the moon landing during the Apollo 11 mission. When Lucas learned Cantwell was the conceptual artist for 2001: A Space Odyssey, he was hired as the visual designer for Star Wars. Using his knowledge of automobiles, Cantwell created many vessels including the Star Destroyer, the Sandcrawler, the Land Speeder, the Y-Wing, and the X-Wing. Despite his legacy, Cantwell never won a single award for his work. In fact, he was only nominated for one award, and it wasn't even for Star Wars, because he was BAFTA nominated for War Games. Nevertheless, Cantwell is known amongst die-hard Star Wars fans for creating some of the coolest looking vehicles in movie history. Cheers, mate. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 secrets behind X-Wings you need to know. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, as well as my Warhammer battle reports, and we even have done some Star Wars stuff as well. We're actually thinking about getting into Star Wars Legion, which is meant to be a tremendous tabletop game. So if you're into that sort of thing, I'd love to see you over there. But before I go, I hope that you are treating yourself with love and respect, both physically and spiritually, my friend, because you deserve all the best things in life, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, okay? You are a massive ledge, and I want you to go out there and absolutely smash it today. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.